All right. So today is such a great day. It's actually going to be the stuff of legend. No, it's going to go down as one of the epics. Why? Because we're sitting here with the editor-in-chief of Relix. Nice. I'm so excited to be here. Welcome to another episode of Galaxy Jams Reacts. So I'm Mike, and then we have our very, very great friend and co-host Lucy.
Hello.
And then we have our very, very great friend and co-host Kai.
Good to be back.
And today we have a very, very special guest, Mike Greenhaus, editor-in-chief of Relix magazine. How's it going, Mike?
Going well. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. You're really such a storied industry professional. You know, as I was looking up all the things that you do, it's really, really quite astonishing, even from an early age, how much of a music fan that you are. And there's just so many things that we need to ask you, Mike. So many things. But the first thing that we need to know, Mike Greenhaus, is what did you have for lunch today?
Most important question.
What did I have for lunch today? That is a very, very deep question. I had a smoothie for lunch today.
Nice. What kind of smoothie was it? What was inside?
It had some bananas and it had some peanut butter and some yogurt and some other good stuff. It's very, very spring vibes, I would say.
Oh, nice.
Yummy.
Nice.
I like that too. That sounds good.
Was it store-bought or was it something you made at home?
It was store-bought, so from the local place around here.
Nice. Very, very good.
Well, how about you, Mike? What'd you have?
I went to my mom's house for lunch and she made chicken, which had some kind of like herby vegetable tomato sauce thing. And then a side of like salad where it's essentially like cut up tomatoes and avocados. And it was yummy.
That
you know?
Sounds really
What did you have, Kai?
Just some homemade chicken pan fried with some rice, trying to be somewhat good.
Did you put any seasoning on it?
Oh yeah, seasoned it up.
Like what?
It was a pre-made seasoning called Step Your Game Up. Funny enough.
Nice.
It was pretty good though. It was good. How about you?
What did you have, Lucy, for lunch today?
I had a sloppy Joe, actually.
Did you make it?
Also homemade, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yummy. That sounds... So did you use like sloppy Joe mix and then just mix it in with ground beef? Or like, how'd you do that?
It's from this food service called Hungry Root that I've been obsessed with. So every week they just send me recipes for the whole week, and that was one of them. So it was delish.
Nice.
Nice.
Very good. You know, you see, Mike, we just want to see what's powering this conversation. We want to see what's keeping this conversation going and what's keeping these great ideas flowing. And we want to know what you guys had for lunch in the chat. So be sure to sound off and let us know what you guys had. We love talking about food. And speaking of food, we have a great list of music ahead of us that we're going to be listening to. So why don't we start off by our first song that we're going to be listening to by Eric Krasno. So Mike, how did Mike Greenhaus and Eric Krasno first happen? Do you remember when was the first time you ever heard of like Soul Live, or how did he first come on your radar?
Well, I think the first time I heard about So Live was when they played Wetlands all the time. But the first time I actually saw them would probably be Berkfest 2000. I believe they did one of the late night sets at that festival, which was kind of one of the kind of prototype festivals for what became kind of the festival scene a few years later. And that was, as you mentioned, back in his So Live days. And it's been really cool to see him kind of break out as a solo artist. You know, there's been a lot of Eric Krasno collaborations in the last few years. And I think the song we're about to hear is something he did in our studio, our Relic studio here in New York City.
Yeah, and not only is he cool solo, but he won some Grammys with Tedeschi Trucks and Derek Trucks, which I actually didn't even know that until like right before like we came on. I was kind of like doing some Googling. I'm like, dang, because I knew he did Lettuce and I knew he did Soul Live. So it's so cool, to see somebody be able to essentially mold himself into each scenario that he needs to be in while also, staying true to what he wants to do. It's really, really difficult, And then I know he also did something with Grizz, right? Which is, again, really cool, stepping out of the box and doing something that, maybe not a lot of people are, being able to check out, but at that point. But it's so cool that that's how you get yourself out there and do things that are out of the box, which is what I love when artists do. So
I think he actually just got another Grammy nomination and Grammy win for his work with Aaron Neville just this year.
Right, I do. So it's so cool,
And Dirty Dozen Brass Band.
to see someone that, maybe you saw him when he's not having all these accolades. And I'm sure that in your life, you're just seeing a lot of these artists that are just coming, like starting from, the bottom and just working hard and working their way up and getting accolades and getting these big shows. And it just must be so cool to be able to see that, because I know that like the next round of artists like Dogs in a Pile and Eggy, and it's like these waves, of different generation of artists, and it's just so great, to see them up and coming and things like that. So we're going to be listening to Eric Krasno live from the Relix studio in 2022. He's going to be covering Deal, which was actually a song written by Jerry Garcia, which was featured in the 1972 album Garcia. So we're here with Mike Greenhaus listening to Deal right here on Galaxy Jams Reacts. Nice, that James Casey?
Yeah, but Beth will sit in for the Relic studio. And he, of course, is known for his work with Trey and now Phil Lesh, but, played with So Live and Lettuce and all those guys early on as well.
Sounds great. The mixing is superb.
Really good, yeah.
You and me got to spend some time wondering what to choose. Show, don't ever know. Watch each card you play it slow, baby. Wait until that deal come round. Don't you let that deal go down, no, no. I began to hear about take a solid year. If I told you all it went down, it would burn up both your ears. Show, don't ever know. Watch each card you play it slow, baby. Wait until that deal come round. Don't you let that deal go down, no,
no. So the keyboardist is playing bass, right?
Yeah. Another hallmark of his work with So Live.
Awesome.
I love the half step up. That's good.
Yeah. Really being tasteful.
Let's go.
Good, man. They're giving each, they're like passing the football expertly.
Yeah.
you poured the wine for me, tightened up my shoe. Hate to leave you sitting there, composing lonesome blue. Goes to show, don't ever know. Watch each card you play it slow, baby. Wait until that deal come round. Don't you let that deal go down. let that deal go down.
His tone is so good.
Cool to hear him do, Krasno spin on classic Dead tune.
Right. There you go, dude. Straight to the goods. Man, I love watching, like a guitar player simultaneously pick notes out of the sky, like out of thin air, and then also use like every single, brain valley that they develop through years of playing like at the same time, right? Like they're harnessing like every single pattern they ever used while also just kind of like grabbing inspiration out of thin air and running with it. And he's doing such a good job of doing this,
Yeah,
What does this make you think about when you watch it, Mike?
It's amazing that, as I said before, that they've taken these classic Jerry Garcia, Robert Hunter tunes, and he's giving it a Eric Krasno, live lettuce spin to it. And you can tell, he grew up obviously on classic rock before he got more into funk and soul music and hip hop and all the other stuff that he's had so much success in. And you really could see him touching on all of those styles of music and that kind of joint history when he plays this classic song.
Oh, definitely. I totally agree with that. Kai, what did you think?
I really like his voice, and I'm not as well versed on Dead stuff, but I know that John Mayer is singing with Dead now, right?
Right.
You can tell that the similarities in like inflection, and is that just because of the song itself, or is that because of like their individual styles? Actually,
I think that he's trying to do the song service while also putting his own spin on it. I mean, when you do a cover, like you kind of have like a different approaches, right? Like one, you can be like, I'm literally going to do this song the way that it was written, like as close as I possibly can. Or the other extreme where it's like you're doing like this whole remix that doesn't sound anything like it, but it kind of like has like a hint of what you're going for. And this is kind of more towards like the traditional, like paying homage to a great tune.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. What about you, Lucy? What do you think?
I love it. Obviously I come from the country music scene, so I don't typically listen to this kind of music, particularly rock, but I can just appreciate good musicianship any day. And especially for me being classically trained, like I love just listening to musicians on stage pass around solos like that.
I know, that's what I was thinking too. Go on.
Yeah, where everybody gets a chance to shine. It's not just about the lead singer. You can tell that this whole band is just so tight and so talented, and you know that they've logged like well over 10,000 hours of practice into their craft. And I mean, it doesn't matter what the genre is. If I'm sitting in an audience and listening to musicians like that, I'm sold.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a language, like when you're like really good musicians, it's like harder to mess up than it is to not mess up. It's like when we're talking right now, like we're all fluent in this language. And so it's easy for us to pass the football and be like, hey, what do you think? Or introduce a new conversation topic. Pretty much what they're doing here. Like they're like doing the beginning, and then Eric Krasno is like looking at one of them and he's like, you. And then they go for predetermined amount of time, and then they nod to the next person, you. And it's like that until they come back to, Eric, where he's about to, round it out here. And, I see this kind of thing all the time, and it seems like an easy thing, but it's like, it's really, really not. You have to play a lot to be able to just kind of like telepathically know, what the other person wants to do in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the sheer technique that it takes, that's not just something that you learn overnight. Like this is lifetimes of gaining that skill and practicing off stage to be able to do that on stage. So
yeah, did you know, Mike, that they were planning on doing a Grateful Dead cover for this Relix session, or did they just bust it out?
They did not tell us in advance, but I think sometimes there's something about playing the Relic studio that makes people want to dig into their Grateful Dead past, which we, of course, enjoy. And when it came to the John Mayer comparison, maybe there's something from them both being from Fairfield County, Connecticut. Maybe there's something in the water there that gives that kind of raspy, soulful voice to the Dead songs.
Oh, wow.
Thanks for that. And Ford's No there in the chat says, I was about to say far less eloquently what Mike just said. You can definitely hear all these layers, flavors layered on into that classic Grateful Dead melody. And Rachel CR 1989 in the chat says that she loves that saxophone. And the Coniferous Lounge said that's sounding very nice. All right, let's jump back into it.
Don't you let that tear go down. Don't you let that tear go down. Don't you let that.
He's giving me those love me eyes.
Don't you let that tear go down. Don't you let that tear go down.
Got the harmonies. Love
Don't
it.
you let that tear go down. No. Don't you let that tear go down. Don't you let that tear.
Nice. Fun for them to do.
Nice.
Oh yeah, all in a
So
day's
fun.
work, fellas. All in a day's work. Man, that was
So fun.
I know, right? That was a good starting one. So we just listened to the song Deal, and then also coincidentally is that in 1972 Warner Brothers Records offered the Grateful Dead the opportunity to cut their own solo records, and so Garcia released a solo effort that he played almost all the instrumental parts, but Bill Kreutzmann played the percussion and drums in that. And so Bill Kreutzmann had a book written by him about him called Deal, which is the name of the song that we're listening to, and it was written by a guy named Benji Eisen. So Mike, how did you and Benji Eisen first meet? Do you remember the time when you guys first got together?
I think we first met in the late 90s through the Fish scene. I, of course, knew who he was because he had this thing called Benji's Digest, where he would email around, the kind of the highlights from what was going on in Rec Music Fish back in the day, and he'd keep track of set lists and whatnot. But the first time we really worked together on something was 2005. We did a Disco Biscuits cover story together for Relix, and we really had a good rapport and had some really great late night chats in between working on the feature. And then we actually had a podcast in 2005, which was kind of like the BC era of podcasting. It was very, very, very granola and grassroots. We did that for 5 or 6 years until Relix started doing a little bit more professional studio stuff, which kind of eventually evolved into the video sessions we do in our studio. And as you mentioned before, of course, Benji wrote that amazing book with Bill, and has been managing some great acts, including Bill and the Kids.
Nice. Oh, definitely. And we had him on the show. It was so lovely to listen to music together with him. And we actually asked Benji to suggest a song for you to listen to, Mike. So he actually suggested a song by Broken Social Scene. So do you know about that artist?
Oh, I do. The collective of artists, if you will.
Yeah. So how
and also a band that Benji and I listened to a lot together back when we do this podcast, especially.
do you remember how you first heard of Broken Social Scene? Was it Benji who introduced them to you?
I don't think that he introduced me to them, but we definitely had a lot of geeky conversations about them. This was again in 2005, 2006 as well, and they were kind of coming through the ranks, playing. They're a Canadian band, but they were playing a lot of the indie rock clubs in New York. So we went to go see them a few times, and of course they ended up kind of having a second life on the festival scene, and they continued to tour and record music, even though various members of the collective have released solo albums and gone on to form different projects.
Yeah, definitely. And so Benji actually has some remarks for you. He said that Mike Greenhaus and I got our start together doing our first cover story together as co-writers, and then launched into a podcast together called Cold Turkey, which we think was the first music podcast ever. So cool. He said that we continue to keep in touch regularly. I had him as a guest on Undermine last season, and Undermine is the podcast that Benji's currently producing. He says that Mike will have some fun thoughts on this song by Broken Social Scene for sure. And then another remark about this song is that in 2003, this album won the Juno Award for Best Alternative Album of the Year. So we're listening to Broken Social Scene from the 2002 album You Forgot It in People. We're listening to KC Accidental right here on Galaxy Jams Reacts. Hell yeah, dude.
Nice. I'm glad that Benji and I both remember that story of how we met still working together the same. It would have been embarrassing for both of us.
Right.
Here's totally different answers.
You guys got your stories straight. Straight out the gate. Oh my God, there was like impossible to find a spot that I could stop that because the whole entire thing was so awesome. Like I absolutely loved it. Lucy, what did you think?
So lots of thoughts. Well, first of all, Mike, I was listening to your playlist on Spotify earlier today and I loved it. I've been thinking this might be just like the theme of everything I talk about today, but I feel like I like sold myself out saying I don't listen to a lot of alt rock, but I'll probably start doing that more because I feel like there's so much of an appreciation for the instrumentation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just love how you can start listening to a song and it's like a minute in before there are even any lyrics or singing, and you can kind of just really be introduced to like the band as a whole and every instrument and begin to appreciate the musicianship there. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah. What about you, Kai?
Yeah, so I have also a lot of thoughts on it as well. I love the tension of this song, even from like the get-go. It's just it's a ton of risers and texture, just kind of going up, going up, going up. And it's funny because it kind of like subsides for a second, and then something else comes in, like those violins just start building up that rising tension again. But something that was that stood out to me is it's just a very formulaic song. It's not like a verse chorus kind of thing. There was in the very beginning. It took a little while, just like you said, Lucy, where the vocals broke in a little afterwards. I thought that was really cool, but I'm already feeling like tension from listening to it in a good way, and I want to see where it goes.
Yeah, and it really reminds me of like a thrashy garage rock band mixed with like Midwestern like emo pop, but they package it in like a psychedelic rock type of sheen to it.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of Tame Impala, especially at the beginning, like the way that the instrumentation is. And I've actually never heard of this band. Have you ever heard of this band, guys?
This band, no.
You know, it's wild. I have actually heard of them.
Oh, really?
Probably, I know, like the one person who's admitting I don't listen to rock. No, because my dad is a big alt rock guy. So I've heard the name before. And I think it's cool. Like the sound of the song sounds like the name of the band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it sounds like this really sort of like almost adolescent, like anxiety.
Yeah, like coming of age almost.
Yeah.
That is what I'm getting from it.
Yeah.
Mike, when you first heard this song, how did you feel when you first heard it? Like the very first time?
I mean, I think to echo what you guys said, I always like this song because it kind of feels like it's beginning mid jam with the drum and kind of those ascending and descending instrumental passages, and also the kind of continuing with the theme you guys were saying. What I really loved about this song is that it's thrashy and it's garage rock, and it's got really, once they actually get to the vocals, like a really kind of catchy, haunting lyric. But it's packaged in this really artful psychedelic jam band texture, which especially when this album came out was definitely something that was not in vogue. You know, this is before Tame Impala and a lot of the other bands. They kind of have done such a great job of mixing psychedelic experimental music with pop music. So they were really one of the bands at the forefront of it at the time that they were first, recording, releasing music, as well as performing. When they do play live, it does channel kind of that psychedelic jam band vibes even more.
Right. And I think it's like the drums that like gives it that, those like snappy, fast rhythms, and especially like going into those like crazy buildups that this guy's going into. And it's like different. Like I feel like I've heard a lot of music that sounds like this, but the drums are like a lot different and not carrying the song, the same way as they do.
Yeah, like there's anxiety.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's exactly what I'm feeling too. Anxiety, like the rising, and also, Mike, I was going to ask you about this too. Mike in the studio, the drums kept changing. Like it was just like it would slow down, and then it would just have the da 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 again. And I noticed that we all kind of like changed our head bobs.
It's like it reminds me like when you're listening to like your typical groove based jam band, right? They're on a slow, steady mountain going up and up and up. And what this band's doing is essentially jumping, like leapfrogging from like step 1 to step 3 to step 5, right? And it's the drummer's paving the way to do that, which is really cool. And Ford's No there in the chat says that it's epic and it's got a great balance of styles. This whole album is fire. Very, very cool. Why don't we finish this great one out?
For people who maybe had never heard of this album or this band before, but are coming from more of the jam band scene, I would say two things. One, there is a version of another song from Broken System that Trey covered a few years ago when he was playing in Toronto. And though I haven't heard it, last fall Andrew Barr from The Slip did some shows subbing for Broken System's drummer, playing this song as well as a bunch of other great songs. So I personally have not been able to track that down, but if there's recordings there, I'm sure he did a great job with some of those drum changes.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that more than I thought I would. Really, it was dope. Like straight out the gate, they were swinging. I liked how the drummer it was like they were like destroying everything all the time. And I like that. I like when a band like has balls and has oomph and is like, aggression. But, it doesn't always have to be like heavy metal to get there. Right. Yeah. And so it's cool when a band can be psychedelic, but not just in like the soft, flowery, hippy dippy way, but can be in like a,
fierce.
Exactly.
They were definitely psychedelic in a really intense mushroom trip kind of way.
Like a really badass way.
Yeah. You were just like waves down.
They're not like standing in a circle holding hands, kind of psychedelic.
For sure.
Yeah. Wait, I have one question. I hope it's not a stupid question, you guys. Do they not play with a click when they record?
It didn't
is
sound
that
like
kind of
it.
the purpose of like a jam band? Because it felt like it was changing tempos.
I think they did that because a lot of bands, they focus on making all their albums so quantized and so on a grid, and it's like that's one thing I noticed about this band too, is that's why I kind of said it was like a garage band, because it sounded like they just got in the studio, recorded it all together in one take or whatever, you know what I mean, and that was the take they used, as opposed to like putting it all on a grid and then like layering it and things like that, which a lot of bands tend to do.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm into it.
Yeah, very, very good. Well, thank you so much, Benji Eisen, for that great pick. We really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, so why don't we move on to the next one. So,
Right on.
Kai, why don't you tell us all about it?
All right. So the Wood Brothers. Mike, tell me about the Wood Brothers.
Yeah, how did you first hear about the Wood Brothers?
Well, the Wood Brothers is originally were Oliver and Chris Wood, who actually are brothers. I first heard about them because Chris Wood is the bassist in Whiskey Martin Wood, a band we cover a ton at Relix, who I've been seeing for years and love, and they're more of like a downtown New York acid jazz mixed with groove and experimental music band. However, the Wood Brothers, at least at the beginning, were more of an Americana roots group. And when I first heard about them, they, at that point, Chris and Oliver had just started playing music again together. Later in life, Oliver also had a career as a guitarist in the roots scene down in Atlanta and around the Southeast. And when they first started playing together, they would do some shows opening for MMW festivals that MMW were playing. So that's probably the first time I heard and saw them. And I think especially in more recent years, they've done a great job of kind of combining the experimental textures of MMW with the amazing songwriting and roots vibes that Oliver in particular was known for before the Wood Brothers formed, and the Wood Brothers were known for in their early days. And we were psyched to be able to record some of their music.
That's
So I
awesome.
noticed that they're not playing in the same studio. This was from about 5 years ago. So what made you guys decide to like build like a whole studio setup for you to showcase these bands? Like, and do you remember the first band that played in that new setup?
Well, I guess the short answer is the pandemic. When we've been doing sessions at Relix in our office for years, for almost 20 years. And we've done different spaces in our office. Some are actually in people's offices. Then we had a little bit of a video studio for a while. We did it in this boiler room that was located in the roof of our building. And during the pandemic, we were looking for alternative spaces to film stuff in a safe environment. This was really early on in the pandemic. Late 2020, early 2021, and we found a space that was a venue that had shuttered during the pandemic, and we got in there and started doing sessions for Twitch. We had a channel which we still do some stuff with, as well as bands.com, bands.live, which is Teach Appear, our publishers streaming service, and we've done all sorts of great stuff there. So that was kind of the the original reason why we moved things out of our office. And even though we are back in the office, it's nice to be able to kind of have a proper studio where we do have bands come through town.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So we're going to be listening to the Wood Brothers. So this is a song that came out from their album The Muse in 2013, but we're hearing a rendition live at the Relic Studios in 2018. This is Keep Me Around right here on Galaxy Jams Reacts. That guitar looks so cool. Oh, he has a whole percussion setup on his guitar.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Look how gorgeous that thing is.
Although I'm lonely, I sweep up the place. I'll go in early and I come home late. And one thing I never forget is a face. And you keep me around. You keep me around. Although I'm sad, I know I'm getting away. You said you wonder how long I'm gonna stay. But I'll show you the rainbow in all shades of gray. And you keep me around. You keep me around.
I feel like I'm standing around a campfire right now.
Yeah.
Although I'm fake and I might be blind, but I'm the one's gonna keep towing the line, and you land in your feet almost every time.
Nice, nice. The coordination it must take to do those two things at once. That's crazy.
He's not even thinking about it. He's just hearing it and it's popping out.
Sad and lonely, they go and come. You think you don't need them, but you gotta have some. Try asking the dark where the light comes from. Hello, I'm fate, and I might be blind, but I'm the one that's gonna keep towing the
Really
line.
good use of dynamics.
Almost every time. Oh yeah. And you keep me around. Won't let you down. Keep me around. You keep me around. You keep me around.
I love that. You know, when he took that pause and I was like hanging on to like every single word that he was doing, you know, and it's just literally three guys like standing around a microphone and I was totally entrapped the whole time. What do you think, Kai?
Yeah, it was really, really good. I mean, again, the coordination between using the top end on the harmonica and then also holding the bass line down in an upright, that alone blows me away. But I really do like their dead space that they use, just like you were saying, that part where they leave you hanging. And not only did they come back in strong, they came back in on like a bridge part, and you could hear the guy kind of like hoop at doing that. But I thought it was really good. How about you, Lucy? What'd you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, this is definitely the key to my heart. I love grassroots. Like, again, the musicianship is just like flawless. And like you said, Mike, it's just, you can tell it's just coming from somewhere deep within. This is something that's so natural to them. Like they probably came out of the womb, like just being musicians, you know?
Yeah. And I think that being in a band with your family members is cheating.
Totally is. No, it's so good. It's so catchy too. Like this song in particular, I think it's cool that they managed to find that balance of like it's a little almost like commercial in that sense. Like you could play this on the radio and I think people would be like jamming to it, but it's just so raw at the same time.
Yeah, Mike, what do you think, or do you hear any influences in this, or what does it make you think about?
It's funny when you mentioned the campfire vibes, because especially for Chris Wood, you know, when I first started seeing him, and he was so associated with the downtown New York vibe. The last thing you probably would ever say was campfire, but that's exactly what I feel too. It feels very much like passing around the song, and everyone can kind of sing along to it. Yet there's so much layered music within there that it's not just like simplistic three people playing acoustic instruments, even if that's technically what they are doing.
Yeah, and his voice, it reminds me of Billy Strings, because I remember I saw Billy Strings before I heard Billy Strings. And when Billy Strings started singing, I was like, this doesn't sound like what this person would sound like. And I feel the same way about him too. I don't really listen to the Wood Brothers ever, so I didn't know what to expect when he started singing. And it's great, you know, I like it when people defy expectations and things like that, you know. Ford's No there in the chat says that it's so nice, and the singer has a whole Dwayne Allman thing going on. It's definitely probably a good indicator of what's influencing him to do this. And Rachel CR 1989 in the chat says this is a nice song to go on a journey with. I mean, this is a good, like, you know, you're exactly like I'm driving in the car. I have 4.5 hours to go until my destination. I'm literally just driving through trees. And this is like the perfect thing to throw on to zone out for 2.5 minutes while I'm driving, right? Zoning out while driving. It's great. Let's get back into it.
Well, you keep me around. Keep me around.
And even though it's stripped down, I can hear like a whole band doing this.
Keep me
Yeah.
around.
It's like not even a simple bass line. It's actually a really involved one, and the harmonica. It's crazy. Nice.
Love it.
Are you sitting over there, Mike? It's about to pan over you. Nice. That's cool, man. You know, I like that. I like that intimate. There's a radio station near here that does that they have touring acts come in and just play like right in the conference room. And I think that's something special, especially when it's bands that they're usually in front of big crowds and things like that. You know, it's putting them in places like that is so much fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So rare that you get to do that anymore too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
the best compliment we ever got was someone said that it was our office had strong roadie vibes, and I'm like, that's exactly what we're going for. We're just like, you know, gear cases around and stuff like that.
Yeah, I bet just being in your office feels great, you know? All right. And it's cool because I noticed that like all of these different Relix videos that we're listening to, it seems that they're all playing in different places, which I think is so cool, right? So you guys have all these different setups that you've been putting musicians in, and they each have their own little flair. So why don't we move on to the next one by Garcia Peoples? So how did you first hear about Garcia Peoples? And then how did, you know, like it go from I know this band to, oh, I want them to come and play in the Relix studio. So how did that happen, Mike?
So Garcia Peoples, I probably first heard of in like 2018, if I remember correctly. And you know, I obviously, you know, working at Relix, love tracking the jam band scene and tracking psychedelic music and finding out new bands and seeing them grow and hopefully prosper and go through the club ranks. And at the same time, I always really enjoyed, you know, the downtown New York scene and the indie rock scene and the DIY scene and all these kind of unconventional spaces that host music, especially, you know, when I was kind of, you know, in my 20s and 30s, and it was mostly happening in Brooklyn. I think it's gone a little bit deeper into maybe Queens and other places now. And Garcia Peoples kind of hugged both of those worlds, you know, as their name suggests. There is a strong psychedelic, you know, 60s, early 70s Grateful Dead vibe to them. At the same time, they played all these Brooklyn alternative spaces and had a little bit of a indie punk edge to them too. So I was, you know, super into them as soon as I first heard them. And the way that they played our studio, they were actually, I believe, the first band to play the studio during the pandemic when we opened up what became our, you know, the Relic studio where we do sessions now for you know, 2.5 years. And they mostly live in the New York area, in Jersey and upstate and whatnot. So they were able to come in and do this session, and it was really exciting. One, to have them in the studio, and two, at that point, none of us had really seen much live music because we were, you know, almost a year into the pandemic, and people weren't going out and seeing stuff. So we got to see a socially distant show, which was great.
Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment. And another quick question. So, you know, like I'm thinking about this while watching this, you know, with Relix, you know, you guys are dealing with, you know, very big acts, you know, and things like that. So as your career is going on and you're getting older and you're seeing all these bands, how do you personally, you know, find who are the up and coming bands?
And you know, occasionally you're invited by a publicist or a manager to check out an emerging band, going to check that out, even if people haven't heard of them. And also, you know, being at the right place at the right time. There's been so many times where I've been lucky to have been in the show and I got there early for the opener and they ended up becoming a bigger band. And, you know, I definitely pride myself, and I think all of us at Relix pride ourselves in kind of, you know, investing in these younger bands on an editorial side. You know, there's a bunch of bands that I wrote small On the Verge profiles, which is our smallest section. You know, there's like 3 or 4 of them on a page, and watching those bands grow to our cover. Actually, our current cover is King Gizzard, and they're a band that I wrote an On the Verge section profile on, I think, like 2014, and you know, here it is almost 10 years later, they're on our cover, and it's amazing to watch those bands kind of, you know, grow with the magazine.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Tame Impala, they're probably the other big psychedelic rock band coming out of Australia, you know? So
Totally.
I really like them. But why don't we check out the Garcia Peoples? So this is actually a song from their 2018 album Cosmic Cash, but we're listening to them perform it on the Relix Studios. This is a song called The Sweet Lie right here on Galaxy Jams Reacts.
Hi, we're Garcia Peoples. We're going to play some songs for you.
Hit me, Daddy. I mean, this sounds so much like the song, one of the songs we already heard. It's great.
The way you lie up on that grass makes it seem like you're the only one who could ever make that last. And the sweet lie that you tell the other man doesn't get me anywhere like it used to do. I'm up in the morning at 4 o'clock, I'm wasting time. I don't know why I try to talk, but mine's not right. With a sweet lie that you tell the other man keeps replaying in my head like they used to do. Feeling heavy in my head, I've got the blues. Know that I encourage you to feel them too. Couldn't get any better than this. Without you, I'm lost in time. And yeah, I know it's true.
I love how intimate this is.
For you. Couldn't get any better than this. Without you, I'm lost in time. No, it's true. I'll make it all up for you. It's not how we go out.
It's what we leave behind.
It's not how we go out.
It's what we leave behind.
Nice.
Very, very intimate.
Yeah, it made me feel like, you know, I'm at a coffee shop or I'm at a bar. You know, I'm getting there like at 5 or 6 in the afternoon. I'm having one drink. It's still light outside. There's people kind of trickling in. I'm just like introspectively like thinking about my life. That's kind of the vibes that
Yeah.
this gives me, you know?
It's like sweetly psychedelic.
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
like
it's
that.
like
That's good.
peacefully psychedelic.
Yeah, it was sweet. You know, it was like with a wink. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It
yeah.
was like it was like a cross between like a good old country song and then something a little bit more and something a little bit sweeter.
Yeah.
What do you think, Kai?
No, I agree with you. It was just a very intimate song, very intimate setting, and even just the volume of the instruments itself. I think it was good. It was really good.
Yeah. What made you decide to, bring that song for us, Mike? Like, this is one of the songs that, you're picking for us to go over. What's making you bring this song for us to be on the show today?
But one thing that I really love about this song in particular is you guys all kind of rightfully pinpointed this as like a nice like 5 p.m. like you're about to have a epic night, but this is the beginning of it performance, and that's definitely a side of their music. But Garcia Peoples at the same time, much like their semi-namesake Jerry Garcia and the Dead, they could have these really small, intimate, stripped-down songs, but then they could expand into these long, extended, deep psychedelic jams. But at the core of those jams are these kernels of songs. So that's kind of one of the amazing things I think about this band and about a lot of the bands that I try to pinpoint today, actually.
Yeah, to me, like listening to this kind of type of genre of a band, especially live, it's like you're in a river, right? And like each little cobblestone is like the lyrics in the song. And so you're pretty much like jumping from one stone to the next while the waters of the jam is like swirling around you, right? And so when a band has really good songs, it makes those landing points like a lot better. So you can do a lot more, land on your 2 feet or do a little jig before wading through the water to the next landing point. And so this was a really good one. AJ Roberts in the chat says this is nice. Megan C in the chat says that it's super intimate, and Ford's No there in the chat says it's like close-up magic but very tentative.
Oh,
yeah,
I like that.
that's so good. I like that.
Yeah, it's like watching like an illusionist on a grand stage with all these props, or you're sitting at a card table with him in a basement and he's still able to blow your mind either or way. There's still ways that you can deliver the magic, even when it's one person with a guitar or 50-person orchestra with an LED wall and a $70,000 light show behind them. Like, either ways you can get there. So thanks again for sharing that. And up next, we have another special pick by our very special guest, Mike Greenhaus, right after this.
Well, the Benevento Russo duo have long been one of my favorite acts, both individually and together as a duo, Joe Russo, Marco Benevento. And I'm excited to listen to Sunny's song with you guys.
All right. And one thing that when I was looking them up that's cool is I saw that sometimes the Benevento Russo duo has bassist Drave Drewitz, who also played with Ween, which is cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then I didn't know that guy is also in Joe Russo's Almost Dead, which is, Benevento Russo's in too. I didn't know that. That's so cool. I'm a big fan of Ween. And I guess not big enough, right? So we're here with Mike Greenhaus listening to the Benevento Russo duo from their 2005 album Best Reason to Buy the Sun. This is Sunny's song right here on Galaxy Jams Reacts. That album art's so cool. Yee. Nice time signature.
Yeah, what time signature? I love this. This is really good.
Oh my God, his pad selection is so good. some cool dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
Man, introspective yet playful and then like deep at the same time, and such a gigantic sound for just two people. I mean, even if they're layering on top of each other in the studio, I know that I've seen them play in videos and it's just like that, you know. What did you think, Lucy?
I feel like I'm back in my college oral skills class, having to guess the time signature for a song
Yeah.
during an exam. But honestly, that was like kind of fun. Like having to think about it that way. It's been a long time since I've actually listened to music outside of classical music, I guess, where it's a little more sophisticated, you know, than just a 4/4, 2/2, 2/4 beat. So
Yeah, it's so crazy how
For
much
sure.
just a slight, time signature is really activating like entire other parts of your brain, because when you listen to like normal 4/4 time signature, you kind of like already know what's going to happen. So
All
you're like
predictable,
filling
yeah.
in exactly like filling in the gaps,
Yeah.
you know? So it's really, really hard to fill in the gaps with this band.
Yeah.
What did you think, Kai?
Yeah, so the first two things that come to mind are the fact that it is emotional from the start. So the dissonancy chords, even in the beginning when it wasn't built out, already caught me. Like immediately had me looking up at the screen, waiting for more. And then of course it's extremely ethereal sounding with like the different. And Mike, you were talking about the different pads he was choosing, the high pikes and stuff. I really like that. But Lucy, more to what you were talking about with the time signature, it's not often that you hear a strange, or I would say an atypical time signature with something very ballady, because something very ballady is typically like 4/4,
Right.
and that's what I'm used to. I'm used to writing in 4/4, like everyone is. So hearing that strange time signature in a song that's not supposed to be like complicated jam bandy kind of music, that was awesome. And I think the song so far is my favorite out of the entire pick.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that Broken Social Scene song where it just makes you want to like go 100 miles an hour in my car and like cry my eyes out.
Yeah. Mike, why did you bring this one to us? I'm really curious.
Well, so it's interesting. So I originally had picked a live song that Marco and Joe did at the Relic studio, which we were kind of trying to highlight some choice moments from our various studio setups over the years. But that ended up being a little too long for the program, so I selected this, which has always been one of my favorite of their compositions. And I guess the ironic thing about it is when they originally wrote this song, at that point, Joe and Marco were doing a lot more kind of groove, and it's still experimental, but more I would say like traditional jazz oriented improvisational music.
Right.
And when they wrote this one, and whoever mentioned Broken Social Scene as a reference point was right. I think they were being influenced by some of this emotional indie rock music. And when they wrote it, I think they both weren't sure if it should fit into the duo, and it kind of ended up being a song that turned the corner for them, and they released a lot of music, which is featured on that same album, Best Days in the Divided Sun, as well as their next album, Play Pop Stop. They kind of fit into that genre, that post jam genre.
Yeah.
But I think when I interviewed Joe once, he mentioned this, that the first couple times they played it, they were playing Knitting Factory and these kind of more jazz oriented clubs, and they played it, this 3-4 minute song, and afterwards they paused, and people were waiting for them to kind of finish it, and they turned around like, no, that's it, that's the way the song is.
Where's the 25-minute jam, dude?
Yeah, exactly. So it is funny that when we needed a shorter song by them, we ran back to this one.
Yeah,
That's
and it also reminded me of Explosions in the Sky too, like
Yeah.
that kind of like post rock groove,
Definitely.
ambient almost type of thing. And it's so interesting, like the different directions that that genre can go in. And you're right, for them, before they were kind of doing more like your classical jazz and type of funk influence, and this is obviously a step beyond that, and it's really really cool that they're able to do it. And this is great. I absolutely love it, and it makes me want to dive into the rest of the whole album. And we also have some comments in the chat. AJ Roberts says that I love the noisy keyboard at the end. Really cool. It almost sounded like a guitar, like that you just kind of strummed and put a ton of distortion on, which I thought was cool. And let's see here. Ordian Azurime says it feels like old style rock. It's a cool way to put it. All right, why don't we finish this back up? Definitely a banger. Ooh.
Yeah, I love that ending. That's
So
cool.
Yeah, it sounded so raw, and so real. And I love when acts do that and not sound so like perfect and so
Quantized,
exactly.
yeah.
I love when it just sounds so like, ugh,
It's
you know what I
alive,
mean?
yeah.
It's great. So wow, this was another really really good pick, man. Thank you so much for sharing that on the show with us. We really really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mike. That. This one's
Welcome.
great. Really going to check out the rest of that album. So, you mentioned that you were a big Fish fan growing up. So, how did you first hear of Fish? Did like one of your friends take you to a show, or like how did Mike Greenhaus and Fish first happen?
Well, I first heard about Fish in the mid to early '90s. At camp, I heard the song "Fee," which I would learn was kind of a little bit of an atypical song for them, but I really loved that song. And then dug into their catalog, and they've been a real gateway to a lot of different types of music for myself, and of course also a great band to go see live over the years. And their kind of roles as musical curators. A lot of the music we talked about today, whether it's roots music or psychedelic music or indie rock music or all these different genres. I really first discovered through Fish and either covers I did or reference points that the guys talked about in interviews. So it is kind of amazing that they are a little bit of a Rosetta Stone for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people who are both listening and going to see them live.
All Trey had to do was mention King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard one time, and then all of a sudden, everyone likes King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Hey, we've been covering the Relics way before then. I'll give us some credit for that.
Nice, but they are. It's like I think that the biggest legacy that a band leaves behind is not so much what they're spearheading, but the wake, that's in behind them. Like the Grateful Dead, there are so many bands that are covering them and that are sounding like them, and just like Fish, there are so many bands that are covering them and sounding like them. And just like the Disco Biscuits, there's so many Jamtronica bands out there, and I think it's so interesting, not just the band, but what happens after the band and how people react even long after they may be done playing music. So actually this song was another fan pick just for you, Mike. We asked Greg Knight, the publicist for Goose and for Greg Knight Music, to suggest a song for you. So Greg Knight had some things to say. He said that Mike wrote an article in 2004 for Relix and Jam Bands on his quest to see Fee live. He said, I always really liked the article. It was more of a vignette on his experience immersing himself into the scene and a cool exploration of the quirky aspects of the journey that are all too common for those of us who hit the road for tour, but foreign to most folks outside of the scene. And he also said, in reference to the band's impending breakup, that maybe in 6 years, they will resurface as a full-time band, and he was almost correct. They got back together in 2009. You know, I think that there's a lot to say about that, because let's use like Fish and Fee as a thing. Like, it's not about seeing the song, right? And it's not always about like, oh, I like that song from this version better than that version. It's when you get into, oh, I like the song from this era of the band, then when they played the song in that era of the band is when you really, really get deep as hell. You know what I mean? And I feel like jam bands and thinking that way, it's kind of like taking up the same place in your brain that sports do, you know, and people even actually, you know, Greg, for example, started the Goose fantasy tour, you know, like the fantasy football, calling out what they're going to play and things like that. And even, you know, John Barber from the Disco Biscuits, you know, his podcast is called Touchdowns All Day. So I think that people make sports references to jam bands like all the time. You know what I mean? I think it's just so fascinating, right? So, Lucy, are you a Fish fan? You ever really sat down and listened to Fish before?
Yeah. I mean, you can't not, but I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan. As in, by that I mean not that I dislike them, just not that I listen regularly.
Yeah. What about you, Kai?
I'm pretty much in the same boat. I think I've listened to Fish a lot more hanging around you guys than I usually do on my own time.
Nice. Yeah, my sister, I like Fish. My sister's seen them like 125 times. So she's, you know, in
She
there
should
like
be in
swimwear. Yeah. And
she knows
actually,
everything about
she
it.
literally gets to the venue like at 3 or 4 in the afternoon and waits right by the door until they open the door. And then she sprints to the front row. And she's done that like 100 times.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? So
That's
she's
dedication.
like, yeah. Well, that's
Well,
what.
that's Fish fans, though.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what a
Fish fans
lot
are
of
like
these
that,
bands
yeah.
do. And so, also just another comment about this song. So Fee is one of the 3 Fish songs, including a song called Punch You in the Eye and The Sloth, that include a lyrical reference to an image that must keep Trey up at night, which is getting a paper cut on the nipple. So that's like a common Fish thing.
God.
And it is, you know,
The triple
terrifying. You
nipple.
know? Yeah. And it is terrifying.
Oh
You know,
my
it's like one of those things that probably stayed with him, and he's conveying that anxiety to everyone
so
else in the
terrible.
song. So it's great that he's doing that. So
I'll never forget that.
we're here listening to Fish from their 1989 album Junta, but this is actually a rendition from July 29th, 2003 at the Post-Gazette Pavilion at Star Lake in Burgettstown, Pennsylvania. We're here with Mike Greenhaus, the Relix magazine editor-in-chief, listening to Fee right here on Galaxy Jams Reacts. It's like right when he's doing that, like everyone already knows what's about to go down.
They
And
memorize
that's like
everything.
so much fun.
I think Greg did his homework, because this was the show, if I remember correctly, the article I wrote in 2004 was about.
Nice.
So, good work, Greg.
The cool shade of the banana tree on the rugged trail toward the balcony. A child of the 20th century, a dried up Goliath and a weasel named far away in another place, a fading beauty named Millie Grace, a gospel singer with pots on her face and a bamboo king to help her keep the pace. He was a Buddhist prodigy, long past the age of maturity. Someday he knew it would set him free, like it did for Floyd, the chimpanzee. You're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath. You're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath.
Such a classic, dude. I love it. And just passes the football right to Paige.
Lily in a bar in Peru, his heart was jumping like a kangaroo, like a beast in a cage in a room. Dutch zoo. It was hopping and jumping in wooden shoes. But Floyd was jealous and alone. He wanted Billy for his own. A desperate craving in his bones. Their love, he said, I will not condone. Then one day on a ship to Quebec, Floyd found Fee and Millie on a lover's trek. He picked up a bottle and broke off the neck. It sliced through the air and Fee hit the deck. You're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath.
Dang, it's the Page Show.
Millie turned and began to scream at Floyd. She said, you think you're pretty mean. And though she was as thin as a small string bean, she slammed him in the face with a nectarine. Floyd fell back over the edge of the ship till he hung from the rail by his fingertip. Millie said, Floyd, I'll make you lose your grip. With this tiny piece of paper, I can make you slip. So Millie took that paper and did the deed. Floyd hit the water with astonishing speed, and as the sharks circled in and began to feed, Millie knew her weasel was finally free. You're trying to live a life that's completely free. Floyd is dead, he's nothing but a ripple. Cause Millie took that paper and sliced him on the nipple.
There it was.
You're trying to live a life that's completely free. Floyd is dead, he's nothing but a ripple. Cause Millie took that paper and sliced him on the nipple. You're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath. You're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath.
Mike, what is going through your head when you're listening to this song, a song that you chase? So you were like looking for this song and you saw this live when they were playing it?
Well, I think that the version that we're listening to right now was from a show that took place in 2003, as you mentioned, and that was, I believe, the first time I saw that song live. I had already seen Fish, I don't know, 50 times or something like that at that point, and it was always so funny that this is the song that kind of seeded my fandom, and inadvertently led me to so much music and meeting so many friends, so much experience. But I'd never heard it live until this moment. So that was a very exciting time.
So were you like surrounded by all your friends and getting hugs, or were you like in the bathroom and like running out to try and catch it?
No, I was with a bunch of great friends, and this show is at the time at least was kind of a famous show where they did a lot of different bust outs of songs that hadn't played for a while, or hadn't played that tour yet. And I believe that the story is that it's 2003, so the band just got their first iPods, and they loaded the iPods up with, I think one song or one version of every song the band had played or covered, and they were kind of scrolling through and writing down some of the songs they hadn't played yet that tour, or hadn't played in a couple of years, for as the case maybe for some other songs they played that night, and they kind of ran through them all. So it was a very exciting night for a lot of people who were chasing these songs, and it was really special that I got to hear this one that I first heard about Fish through.
Nice. Kai, what did you think?
I mean, I'm not as familiar with Fish songs, so this sounds like other Fish songs that I've heard. But
Yeah.
I know that the fan base for Fish is insane, mainly from your sister, actually, from all the stories you've told me. Our lead guitarist in our band really, really loves Fish. He goes to their shows Probably not as much as his sister does, but pretty close. He loves their music a lot.
Yeah, they're one of those bands that it's like a whole, people the more that you dig, the bigger the pie, right? Like you can, casually listen to them, or you can easily make them like the focus of your whole life, and you can get so much fruit, from both of those options.
I can only imagine that a Fish show is pretty wild though. Like you've been to one though, right, Mike?
Yeah, I've been to probably about 10. And it's always a fun time. I mean, when you get to those like huge venues, it's like,
it must be huge.
The band and the production is one thing, but then like getting there and then like the people you meet, and then that's like a whole nother thing too. It's like any gathering, it's like the band becomes not so much the only focus, but then it's also like the community and the friends and, everything that you made along the way, and it's what makes it so much fun. What did you think, Lucy?
Yeah, I totally see the draw. I really do. It's very chill to listen to. Like I see what you mean, where you can kind of drown everything else out and just feel the music. But at the same time, the lyrics are incredible. Like they tell such a creative story, and some of them are hilarious. Some of them are probably a little more cynical. I wish I could hear better in this song, but like it's deep at the same time. So I see why people love it. You can just sit back and enjoy it, or you can, really meditate on the message that's being said. Yeah,
Fish is really good at having those like idiosyncrasies, which can make sense the way that any words can make sense if you put them together, and or they're really, really good at telling extremely textured, deep stories that have a lot of detail to it. It's cool that they're able to do both. And all right, why don't we chase the rest of the song? Let's get back into it. See, they just finished the words, and so now this is when the goods. This is when they give you the goods.
This song in particular always reminded me of like a R-rated nursery rhyme or something. When they do the jam at the end, it's almost like this song is just like dissolving into this really cool textured moment.
Such a cool way of putting it.
Yeah, they're so good at just driving the car like anywhere they want to go.
Yeah, it's like it's almost relaxing, but then it's edgy at the same time.
It's just therapeutic, and sometimes therapy can be harsh, and sometimes therapy can be pillowy and wonderful, and they can give you both. This is cool. Nice, really soft interplay. Hell yeah, dude. Oh man, this stopped way too early. It went to the next one, but I gotta, I could sit here and listen to that whole show with you, Mike. And this is one of those shows where, like, I remember one time I was seeing the Disco Biscuits, right? And there I am. I'm like sitting in the crowd, like I'm maybe smoking some weed or doing some cool guy stuff. And like, the band's playing and I'm jamming out to the band. And then like while the band's playing, like I just start like daydreaming and I start thinking about like, like, oh, I haven't like talked to my parents in a while, and I start thinking of like different things about my life, and then all of a sudden, wham, I'm like slammed right back. I'm like, oh, wait, like I'm at a concert. And I look at the band and I'm like, like anything's possible, anything. And that's what I feel like the feeling that Fish gives me too, is that it's limitless. Those 4 guys can live anything in the world, and it's great, that people are documenting it so well.
It's like the studies on psychedelic drugs and how they can be medically and psychologically very healing in that way. Like music, especially in this sense, feels like it's doing the same thing. Like just what you described, where suddenly you realize you were thinking about how you haven't talked to your parents. Like those are the kind of moments where your mind can wander and sort of make these realizations that it might not have been able to if it hadn't been led there somehow.
Guided, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I listened to like a Duncan Trussell podcast, and one of the things he said was like some people when they smoke weed, they get anxious because the weed makes them think about like things in their life that maybe they don't want to think about, and they've been like pushing it to the side and brings it to the forefront. You're kind of like, oh, you know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes bands can do that, like when you're watching a band and you're like unlocking different parts of your brain by being inspired and things like that. Like that's why, for example, you'll be at a show and look over and there's like someone like bawling their eyes out, I mean? Or and then you look over and the person next to them is like jumping up and down with a huge smile on their face, It's just, being able to feel something, anything, especially as you get older, it's so rare, for a band to be able to like unlock like that vulnerable, like, really, really raw, part of you. And that's why I think a lot of people, they go to see these bands and, they go to this lifestyle is because they're not chasing like the band and they're not just chasing the feeling, like they're chasing like that growth, that happens when, you have like that mindful meditation. And I feel like this band does such a good job of doing that,
Yeah. Fish is therapy. That's why everybody loves them.
No, for sure. Definitely. So do you remember what was your first Fish show?
My first Fish show
Mm-hmm.
was New Haven, 1998.
Nice. That's so cool. So did you like, how did you know about them first and then go to see? Or like, did someone was like, hey, what are you doing tonight? You want to go? And you're like, all right, like that?
Yeah, I first heard about them, as I mentioned before, like 92, 93 at camp and gradually got more into their music. But, at that point I was, in middle school and early high school and wasn't able to go, although, I definitely had friends who went and there's a couple missed opportunities, here or there, but I finally got to see them a little later on in high school and it was, it's been a constant, ever since. But by the time I actually saw them live, I already had a copy of the Farmer's Almanac, which is the set list compilation that both at that point they sold in bookstores.
Andy Bernstein, right?
Andy Bernstein, yeah, who now actually shares a very thin wall in our office at Relix, which is
oh cool. He was on our show.
So, yeah. So yeah, I was I was already checking out set lists and conversing with other fans pretty regularly. So I came in pretty prepared, which was good.
Yeah, it's like when you look at like, the score of the latest game is like the same thing as when you look at set lists from the latest show.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like the same kind of thing. AJ Roberts in the chat says that rock concerts in church lights up the same center in your brain. That's definitely true. I mean, I feel like when I go to shows, it's like hallowed ground sometimes, and, it's like a traveling church circus, that's, like that. Right. So it must be so cool to be at the center of it all, especially if you're like in the band and able to see, all the people in the crowd and how happy they are and like the mixed emotions and everything that's going on. Like what a rush it must be all the time.
Yeah.
Do you have time for just one more quick one, Mike?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So thanks again for your time. We really appreciate listening to music together with you. And thanks again to everyone in the chat that's hanging out and letting us know what you think about this great music. So last, we're going to be listening to another song from the Relix studio. So this is actually a band called Amayo. And it's led by Duke Amayo. I'm probably mispronouncing it.
Amayo, yeah.
Thank you. Amayo, who's the lead singer, percussionist, and composer of the Antibalas Afrobeat Orchestra. He also composed the Grammy-nominated Food Chronicles album for the Best Global Music Album of the Year. So, Mike, how did this group end up in the Relix studio? Like, do you guys just get like, you know, people pitching you and then you just pick, or do you guys pick and then you reach out, or is it like a little bit of both?
So I think it's definitely a mixture of both. We work with a lot of managers and publicists who, pitch us acts. There's definitely bands that we try to get. Antabalas has been again, I feel like there's been some nice current themes throughout our conversation today. And one of the current themes is Wetlands, which was Pete Shapiro's first club in New York. And Antabalas played there regularly in the early 2000s. They had a residency, and they come from the Afrobeat scene, and were playing around Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn a lot around the time. So their connection with Relix really began through Wetlands, and they introduced me to Afrobeat music, and fell at FMA Kute through them, and they've been another constant in my life. I'm lucky to have seen them in various incarnations over the years. A lot of the guys from that band have gone on to play with all sorts of different bands, including Joe Russo and Marco Benevento, and Joe Russo is Almost Dead, and in different configurations. And I think someone mentioned in the chat, the idea of church and rock concerts having a lot of overlaps, and some of the guys from Antabalas who are in this video, particularly Jordan McLean, the trumpeter, actually participate in these musical high holiday services that I organize each year that we do at Brooklyn Bowl in Brooklyn, New York, as well as at the Relix studio. And it's kind of funny how in a lot of ways they were a spiritual center for me, and then they kind of bled into a religious spiritual center for me, so it's been amazing. And Amayo has his own music. He actually is performing as a solo artist now, and this was a great session he did about a year and a half ago. Nice.
All right. Well, we are listening to Amayo live at the Relix Studios in 2021. This is the song Shadowless right here on Galaxy Jams Reacts. Ooh, a lot of interesting instruments. Sounds like an orchestra tuning up.
Yeah.
Nice. You're giving me something to hold on to. Kai, tell me what you think.
It sounds very secretive.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like some spy craft is going on right here. I also love that Nord. I keep seeing that Nord synthesizer in so many videos, and it's making me want one so bad. But I know it costs as much as a car, so I probably won't ever go get one. But yeah, it sounds like some secret agent stuff. I really like it a lot. How about you, Lucy? What do you think?
I'm simply enjoying it. I don't really have many thoughts other than just sitting here and enjoying every bit of it. I love, as a fiddle player, love seeing a fiddle player on stage. Obviously, that's an element that I'm enjoying. But I think I might have to circle back actually on any commentary because there's so much to kind of digest, and yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back to me.
To me, it sounded like, you know, imagine like a vase, but it was shattered and there's a million pieces on the floor, right? And so when this band starts, like you see the pieces vibrating and then slowly come together and like form this thing, right? And that's the imagery that I get with this band. I love how when they were starting up, I was like, what are they doing? And then I'm like, I'm not even going to figure it out. I'm just going to let them just kind of guide me where they're going. And I think that they're expertly laying down these like very, very, very simplified and easy like handles for you to hold on to while they guide you through this journey that they're chugging you towards, right? It's really kind of reminds me of like a train almost, you know, just chugging along, at least at the part that we're at right now. And, you know, like at first, like when they were starting, I was looking at the way the band was looking at each other and I was kind of like projecting my own insecurities by thinking like, are they messing up, or is this what they're trying to do, or is this like what they're going for, right? But then I realized like this is exactly what they were trying to do. You know what I mean? It was so purposeful. And just because something can sound meandering or mysterious or whimsical or maybe not all the way put together doesn't mean it wasn't done on purpose, you know? And I think that there's something to say about that, you know, from when you have a band that's like tight as hell out the gate, you know, right when it starts, it's like, you know, a guitar line you like and then a bass line you like, and then everyone's ready to go. Like, it's cool when bands go through, you know, the opposite of that and kind of let it all form like itself, right? And I love the way that this band is doing that. In the chat, we got AJ Roberts saying that it's polyrhythms for the win here, and that AJ Roberts says that it reminds him of Thelonious Monk. Definitely reminds me of that, you know, for sure. And Megan C, that it's very reminiscent of Sun Ra, and Hunter Lee also agrees that it sounds mysterious, right? You know, I definitely agree with all that. What does this make you think about, Mike, when you listen to it? You know, all the history that you have with this band, and were you there live, you know, when they were playing this?
This particular version, I unfortunately was not in the studio for, but you know, I've been lucky enough to see these musicians play in different configurations over the years, and a lot of them play in the Relix studio. You know, I feel like everyone's comments are spot on. You know, there's one thing that there's definitely a mysterious vibe to it, and two, they're really layering. It's like a lot of the repetitive, layered, kind of, you know, thick sound, which is just slowly building and building and building,
Mm-hmm.
and then when eventually they do you know, solo over it or have like a moment, a break in that, it just heightens the entire experience. And you know, I think you know, some classic jazz and as well as someone like Sun Ra are definitely some great reference points for this music.
Yeah, they just seem so patient, you know, and
Yeah,
I
patient
feel
for
like,
sure.
you know, like let's talk about Fish for just a few seconds. Like being patient while you're playing in front of like 10,000 people is like probably so hard to do because you have all this energy and you have all this creativity and you just want to get it out, you know, get it out right now. And it's so great how people just allow themselves to just like relax and like let things form, and how the audience is giving them that courtesy as well, you know? So everyone's just kind of there, like, you know, enjoying the experience and not like waiting for the payout, you know?
I can't even understand that, because if I was in front of 10,000 people, I would feel the weight of expectation on me.
Right.
Like to like, oh, am I drawing this out too long? Am I being too boring?
Like, do I have to perform?
Do I have
like,
to,
what am I supposed to be doing here?
What is the thought of every 10,000 person, you know, people in the audience? And I mean, when you are so confident that you can just say, no, they're going to love it. They've always loved it. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it exactly. We're going to do it exactly the way we designed it to be. I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think, Mike, what you said about them just taking you on a journey, like that's been my experience as a listener with this particular song. I feel like I'm just sitting here listening and letting the music take me wherever it wants to go. And I'm not really overthinking it beyond that. I'm just kind of sitting here enjoying it.
Yeah. And I will say that this song, this band, this recording, it's a journey I've never been on before. I don't think I've ever heard anything like this, So thanks so much for bringing this. Why don't we dive back into this journey together? That gourd player is like my favorite. Oh my God, I love it. It's like we're in the jungle and it's opening up to like a Mayan temple.
It's a very vivid and I think spot on description of this music.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm in there.
That rhythm coming in, yep.
I definitely did not think about it when I was selecting these songs or when my colleagues and friends selected songs I thought I would like, but I definitely think that one of the common themes for all these different styles of music is it is all very emotional music.
Yeah.
Oh,
definitely.
And it's like different emotions, And
Yeah, exactly.
even if it's not strong, it's still like making you feel something. And I feel like as I get older, I'm chasing bands that make me feel, however
Definitely.
it is.
Dude, also his vest is amazing.
Oh yeah.
I love
like
it
that too.
so much.
Man, that was absolutely
Very
phenomenal.
cool. Very cool.
I've never heard anything like that, and especially to my like Americanized ears, I'm trying like I keep looking at them and I was like, did the guitar like lose where he is, and they're like, no, like
It's like all on
I just need to
purpose.
stop and I just need to let them do their
Yeah.
thing, and they did, man.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
It's hard not to quantize things in your own head when you're a musician because you're like, oh, for example, the beginning.
Where's
of
the
piano
drop,
part.
bro?
Yeah, why was that piano part? Why did it seem like he missed it? And it wasn't. He didn't want to play there.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
This is one of those bands that I could watch this, like you have to watch this over and over again. And then each time you focus on like one person.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's how you're getting it, and I think Fish is like that too. You could listen to a great Fish jam, but then, you go back and you're like, okay, like I'm only going to pay attention to Mike. Like that's all I'm going to do. And like, you just learn so much just from that,
Yeah. But then even collectively, if you just listening to it for the first time collectively and not breaking down those parts, it kind of just becomes like part of your wavelength. Like I feel like it's like in my brain waves.
Yeah.
that sound overall.
Well, that's why like you get a song stuck in your head. It's literally like that energy just like bouncing around your head, like it's like that. Like it's
like I got the message, They were like telepathically.
Yeah, like when you have a weird interaction with someone or something and like it just replays in your head over and over and over and over and over and you're like, I should have said this and I should have done that, right? It's so interesting when music has that same impact on you when you're like listening to it, you can't even stop it from, being an earworm, you know, and your brain just like replaying it from you just because your brain liked it so much.
Right.
Yeah.
It becomes a feeling.
Man, well, we just want to thank you so much for your time and attention, Mike.
Yeah,
thank you again for being here. I want to thank every single person.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you to every person that's listening on the show and that's been interacting on the chat. Thank you to every person that will be listening to this recording. Want to do a great job and thank my great friend and co-host Kai. Want to do a great job and thank my great friend and co-host Lucy.
Thank you.
Want to do the best job and thank myself. Want to thank Greg Knight and also want to thank Benji Eisen for suggesting some great music for us. And I want to thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for being here. We hope that you had a great time together with us.
I did. Definitely did.
All right. Well, and we hope that you don't mind if we do the best job we can reaching out to see how we can listen to music together again. And for those of you listening, but first, hey, Mike, so I know that you're a very busy person and you have a lot going on. Is there anything in Mike Greenhaus world that's coming up that you're in particularly excited about that you want to share with us today?
Well, as I mentioned before, we have King Gizzard on the cover. That was really exciting to write, especially, having seen them when they were just a new band coming over from Australia and kind of watching them grow into full-on arena amphitheater band. That's been awesome. So that's currently out right now, and our team's going to be down in New Orleans next week. We're moderating some panels on the Days Between Festival. So if you're going to be in New Orleans and checking out that event, definitely come by and say hi to us.
Yeah, that event just looks, the whole Jazz Fest world just looks so nuts. Like I've been to New Orleans a few times, but I've always wanted to go during Jazz Fest. It seems like I wouldn't get any sleep for like 2 weeks.
You wouldn't? No, not there.
And you could still subscribe to Relix. We still print, physical copies. So, stop by relix.com and help support us.
All right. And so just for those listening, we do have some shows coming up. We're listening to music with Caroline Kerr, who is the senior project producer for Superfly and for Bonnaroo. That's this Thursday, April 27th. We're listening to music this Sunday with Ryan Stasik from Humphreys McGee. Listening to music later on this next month with Jay Sweet, who's the executive director at Newport Jazz and Newport Folk Festival. And we're also listening to music with Scotty Swang, who's in a new band called More that's going to be a great up-and-coming act. So want to thank everyone for being here, and we will see you right here on the next episode of Galaxy Jams Reacts. See you then.